Matt Barnes is in, please.
You someone swear that testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Sure. My name is Matthew, M-A-T-T-H-E-W, Barnes, B-A-R-N-E-S.
What is your current occupation, sir?
I'm currently the captain of detectives for the Wausau Police Department.
How long have you been with the Wausau Police Department?
17 years.
So it's safe to say you were so employed in October of 2010?
That's correct.
Were you the captain of detectives at that point in time?
No, I was not.
What was your title then?
I was a detective.
As part of your course of employment, did you become involved in the investigation of the disappearance of Stephanie Ann Lowe?
Yes.
And before we go forward, could you just give some background as to your education and training experience briefly for the jury?
Sure. Prior to my career in law enforcement, I graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. I was hired March 10th, 2000 at the Wausau Police Department. I spent 3 or 4 years as a patrol officer, working night shift, responding to calls. After that, I worked undercover in a drug unit, primarily conducting controlled buys and executing search warrants looking for illegal drugs. I was then promoted to detective, where I stayed for 6 or 7 years. Left that position, became a patrol lieutenant, and went back to working nights and pulling over cars and responding to calls. I then was assigned to supervise a new unit called the Community Resource Unit at the Wausau Police Department, whose primary focus was dealing with specific neighborhood issues, 90% of which included undercover controlled buys of narcotics and executing drug search warrants. From that position, I was promoted to patrol captain, where along with another patrol captain, we were responsible for all the uniformed officers at the Wausau Police Department. And most recently, about the first of the year, I transitioned to be the captain of detectives.
Thank you. To maintain your position and to advance as you have, do you have to maintain and obtain certifications as a law enforcement officer?
Yes.
And how often do you have to do that, or is it an ongoing process of continuing education?
The minimum requirement is 24 hours a year of continued education to maintain our certification. Myself included, all the Wausau officers receive significantly more than that. That's our in-house training. We all go to specialized training throughout the state and the country.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention back to your involvement in the investigation of the disappearance of Ms. Lowe. We've heard testimony that her disappearance was reported on October 10th of 2010. Is that consistent with what you understand from the investigation?
Yes.
And on October 11th, the next day of 2010, did you have the opportunity to be involved in a search warrant that took place at 701 West Thomas Street here in the city of Wausau?
Yes, I did.
As a detective, is that the normal course of procedure where you might come in the next day to do some work on a case?
We all serve on-call rotations, and when a case is, the amount of work exceeds that of that on-call detective, then the other detectives for the police department also respond. It was not a regular work day for us.
And then directing your attention again to October 11th of 2010, the search warrant that I mentioned, or responding to the address that I mentioned, that was for a search warrant that was conducted with Detective Strobach and Detective Wilgernese?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's talk about your arrival on scene. Are you aware, or do you recall about the time you showed up at the residence?
I don't recall the exact time, but I believe it was early afternoon.
Had you been given information up to that point, again, not asserted for truth or lie, but kind of what you were relying on as far as what you were looking for, what kinds of things you were going to be doing at that residence?
Well, at that point in time, it was unknown what the real circumstances surrounding the call were. We knew that Miss Lowe was reported missing. We knew there were some suspicious circumstances and observations inside the apartment, and we were there to try and put the pieces of that puzzle together.
Because to your understanding, other officers, some patrol guys, and others had looked around to make sure that the scene was secure and to make sure that Stephanie wasn't hiding or injured somewhere within the residence, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this was kind of an information gathering?
Yes.
All right. Why don't you tell the jury what you did first upon arrival?
Sure. Upon arrival, the group of us assessed the situation and trying to determine a strategy on how we're going to divide our resources or our time and who's going to do what. One detective was assigned to photograph the scene and try and document as much information as possible. Other detectives took the role of processing the scene and looking for clues or evidence as to the whereabouts or the circumstances surrounding Miss Lowe's being missing at that point in time.
And so if one detective was taking the photos for this particular occasion, would that have been Detective Strobach?
Yes, it would.
But you would have been present at the time these photos were being taken?
That's correct.
So you feel comfortable if I present you with a photograph that was taken on that date when you were present, you could say if that was a fair and accurate depiction at the time you were at the apartment?
Yes.
And then were you one of the detectives involved in processing the scene?
Yes.
Let's talk about outside of the residence. What kind of, we've heard testimony as to this, but is this a two-story apartment building where the apartments are on the top?
Yes, this is a building that's on the corner of a main intersection in a city street. It includes a quasi-storefront on the lower level and an apartment on the upper level.
And what color is the door to Stephanie's apartment, if you recall?
It's red.
And once you go through that door, what do you see immediately next?
Well, there's a set of stairs that are enclosed, but it appears as though these stairs were added after the main construction of the building, with a roof and walls built around them. And those stairs lead to the west and up to the second story.
Those stairs are designated for just that apartment, though, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When you did you and the other detectives make your way up those stairs?
Yes, we did.
And at the top of those stairs, is it kind of a landing and then another doorway?
Yes, there's a landing, and then as you make it to the top of the stairs on the right-hand side is the entrance actually into the apartment, another door.
From the first lower door, stairway, landing, upper door, was there anything that just struck you at that point in time as noteworthy?
No.
So you and the detectives go inside of Stephanie's apartment, and we have a diagram, but I think we've kind of beaten the layout to death a little bit. Where did you go, and what did you see in this apartment that was noteworthy?
Sure. Well, as part of our assessment, we want to make sure we're not destroying evidence as we move through it. One of the first things I observed is there's a hallway that's open on one side to the family room that leads to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and that's a hardwood floor. One of the things we observed as a group is it was a sticky floor. So as our shoes are tacky, you could hear your shoe as you lifted it off the floor. Making our way through, my observation was it was not an immaculate apartment, but it was, given our experience, it was also not an apartment that I would call trashed or that there was anything initially upon going into it that seemed out of place or noteworthy until we got into a bedroom. So the family room seemed like a reasonable family room area. The kitchen seemed like a reasonable kitchen area. There was a spare bedroom on the south side of the upstairs apartment that had a box spring and a mattress sitting on the floor. The carpet was stained and not in good repair, but it also didn't look like a bedroom that anyone lived in. There were miscellaneous household items in there. It looked more like it was used for storage.
Those stains that you referenced, was there any indication that those were new stains, or did they look somewhat old?
No, it looked like older carpet that had, what caused the stains I couldn't tell you, but it didn't seem like a fresh stain. It clearly did not look like a blood stain or anything like that.
So you mentioned nothing seemed terribly unreasonable until you went into the bedroom area. Why don't you tell the jury what you noticed about the bedroom when you arrived there?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that was obvious to us, and we were given a heads up from the officers that were in the scene, is here's a bedroom that's clearly lived in. It has household items in it. It has clothing in closets, but there's a bed that has, and really nowhere did we see sheets or bedding associated with anyone sleeping, so it's a bare mattress. And right in the center of the mattress is a stain that we felt was consistent with blood, in so much as it also smelled of bleach. So, I know, and I included in my report because I thought it was noteworthy that I got down and stuck my nose 2 inches from a mattress with a blood stain. So you don't forget those kind of things. And it smelled of bleach, and I think everyone knows what bleach smells like. But the stain was odd shaped in that there wasn't a stain in the center, but around the perimeter, circular is not the right word. I'm trying to come up with a great way to describe this.
How about we use a picture?
I think that would be a great idea.
I'm going to place on the Elmo what's already been marked and admitted as Exhibits 6 and 12. I'm going to show them to you first. Do you recognize these as what the mattress looked like that day?
Yes.
Is that what you were referring to when you said it wasn't circular?
Right. It's a stain. The center of the stain is not red, but we can clearly see red material consistent with a blood stain around the edges of what you can see on the image.
And then this is number 12. Is that just like a closer view of the same thing?
Yes.
Based on what you saw and your training experience and the smell, did you think it looked like somebody had tried to clean up?
Yes.
We've heard a little bit of testimony about swabs and their purpose and how you use them. Are you trained to collect swabs for the purpose of identifying blood and or DNA?
Yes.
And your agency doesn't test the swabs, you collect them and send them off to a crime lab, correct?
That's correct.
And did you collect swabs from that mattress that day?
Yes, I did.
And could you just kind of explain how you do that, what you use?
Sure. It's a really expensive Q-tip that comes in its own packaging. Each swab is opened. There will be 2 swabs per package. This sounds overly simple, but if it's a wet stain, you simply take the tip of the Q-tip and put some of the stain on the Q-tip, and then it goes into its own individual box that has vents in it that allows that to dry. If it's a dry stain, then we use distilled water that we have in our evidence kits, wet the tip of the swab, and then use that swab on whatever the stain might be until you feel you've gotten some of that substance onto that long Q-tip with a wooden handle. Put that in the same type of box so that it can dry, and those are packaged. And it seems pretty simple, but that's how it works.
And in addition to the mattress and the stain that we see in Exhibit 12, I believe, did you collect any other swabs from any other bloodstains in the bedroom?
Yes.
Or I should say presumed or suspected bloodstains?
Yes. There were stains that were found on the wall behind or above the headboard.
And you swabbed those as well?
Yes.
Did you swab any stains on a nightstand within the bedroom?
Yes.
Were there any other ones that you specifically recall on that date?
There were other areas with blood. I know we took numerous swabs. I'm sure there are others, but I'd have to refresh my recollection if there was clothing with blood on it. There was additional blood on the bed. I believe on that date we either took those items or took samples via swabs.
Okay. Now, also in the bedroom, let me phrase this differently. Was there a stain on the carpet?
Yes.
And how was that treated on that date? Did you swab it? Did you photograph it? Did you kind of wait until a later date to handle that? What did you do with the carpet?
I believe there was some of all of the above. It was photographed. Can't tell you that I have a recollection if we swabbed it. I would think that we did. And ultimately, at a later date and time, I cut the carpet apart and took it as evidence.
And we will get to that. That was on a later warrant, correct?
That's correct.
So also within that bedroom, there's kind of an important closet, right?
Yes.
And I'd like to talk with you a bit about that closet. First of all, I'll ask you, did you locate something pretty important in the closet within the bedroom that you determined at some point to have been shared by Stephanie Lowe and Eric Mahomes?
Well, first off, the closet was really important to us because it contained both. There were two sides to it. One side had men's items believed to be Eric Mahomes, and the other side had female clothing and shoes, which we believed to be Stephanie Lowe's, which told us that was the bedroom that they were utilizing as their own. A different detective, while I was in the room, actually searched that closet, and there were items located in that proved to be very important.
I should have phrased that differently. You were present while Detective Wilgernese looked in the upper shelves of that reference closet, correct?
That's correct.
And while you were present, was a safe found in that closet?
Yes, a black Century safe.
Okay. I am going to show you some pictures, and I'm going to ask if these are the ones you recognize as the closet. 222 and 223. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, I do.
And are those pictures that were taken while you were present on October 11th of 2010?
Yes, they were. Can I just see the one underneath them? Yes, they were.
Okay, I'm going to place on the Alamo first open mark as 222. Can you just describe what we're looking at in that picture?
Sure. That's a built-in closet into that room. It's not built into the wall. It's attached to the wall. It's a wooden closet structure with two sides to it and then two cabinets above them.
So if I'm looking at as I work on the screen, disregard. On the right-hand side, as we're looking at the screen, is that the female side of clothing and shoes?
I believe so, yes.
And the left-hand side is where you notice the male clothing, presumably belonging to Eric Mahomes?
That's correct.
Now, in that upper area, it appears that there is an open area, and then above it there is a closed area. Is that accurate?
There's two areas to each side. There's the main closet area or the wardrobe area where you can hang hangers, and there's a cabinet above each side.
Is there, just, I'm not sure how to phrase this. It appears from looking at this picture, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I wasn't there, that there's like a shelf right above the hangers, and then there's an area with like a cover on it above that. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So there's some open storage and then some closed storage
Yes.
on each side.
Yes.
And in the side pertaining to Stephanie, let's just talk about that for a minute. Is there any door available for that portion directly above the hangers, or is that always open?
It would be open when the main wardrobe doors, which you see open in this image, are open. So there's not a separate door for that area.
And then above that area that is in this picture appears to be closed. Do you recall if that is something that to remain open has to be held open, or is there a hinge? Do you recall that?
I don't recall a hinge, but I've seen images where I'm the tallest guy in the room, so I'm holding it open while a picture's taken, and I know that was required. So my best assumption at this point in recollection is that there was not a bar or something that would hold it open without human assistance.
Okay, so just my understanding, you had, during the time that you were there, you had to hold it open, tallest guy there, for it to stay open.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm going to now show what's been marked as 223. It's just a little bit more of a close-up. Is that a close-up of what we can kind of generally call Stephanie's side of the closet?
Yes, it is.
And is that your hand in the glove in the upper right-hand corner?
Yes.
Now, we talked about something important that was found. Was it found in the area that you're holding open?
Yes, it was found behind what appears as a white item of clothing in that upper cabinet.
When that was found, when you were present, you said it was behind that white item of clothing. Was it pushed back pretty far in the closet?
Yes, it was behind that item, probably pushed all the way to the back.
Did you have to, or did the person who retrieved it from that closet have to stand on a chair or something else? Was there any assistance in being able to reach the back of that area?
Yes, Detective Ogrenese actually retrieved that item, and she needed to stand on a chair to be able to get up into that area.
And if I were to show, you mentioned a safe before. Is that what we're talking about? A safe that was behind the white item of clothing?
Yeah, a safe, but not in the hundreds of pounds made of steel. This is a kind of a fireproof Century small suitcase size lockbox.
And once that safe was taken down from that area by Detective Ogrenese, what did you all do with it? Was it just placed on the floor? What happened?
I don't recall exactly where it got placed, but our focus at that moment became trying to locate a key to open it. So time was spent in the room looking for keys.
And during the time that you and the other detectives were present, did you locate one?
No.
Were you able to find an alternative way to open the safe?
Yes. It was a crowbar and a hammer. And pounding on the crowbar was able to pop and pry the safe open.
And with the court's permission, I'm going to ask Captain Barnes to come down here and put some gloves on and open up. Has this been marked yet?
No.
If I could open it and we can get the bag marked? Yeah, let's do that first.
Good maneuver.
Yes, you may go down.
235. 235. What'd you say? Yeah, those are there. I had those right. Yeah, she opened it. That's some cases that I just did not read it. She would read it.
Where would you like me to place it?
actually used for many of them. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I'm going to give it a college try. Where it is zoomed out, we can't. Maybe, yeah, you know, this might work better if counsel doesn't object, just kind of show it to the jury. It seems to be kind of awkward. Is that?
Go ahead.
Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay. And does that appear, based on the evidence tape, the bagging, and everything, to be the same safe that was located within the top shelf of Stephanie Lowe's side of the closet?
Yes, it does.
And you can see. Thank you. Probably had to get up there. All right, you indicated that you had to use a crowbar and a hammer to get that safe open, and once you did, was there something of importance found within that safe?
Let me just, to clarify the record, Detective Leckleitner of the Marathon County Sheriff's Department is the one with the skills with the crowbar and the hammer. And he's actually the one that opened it, not myself. I got the chance to, we discussed, are we going to break the safe to open it? We didn't have another choice, and he's gifted when it comes to that. So that's how it was opened.
Thank you for correcting me. I should have phrased it. When the safe was opened, were there important items located within it?
Yes.
And what items were those?
I mean, the primary item of interest was money and crack cocaine.
And I believe you indicated when going through your experience that you have some background and training in drug cases, correct?
That's correct.
And so when the safe was opened by Leckleitner and the drugs were located inside, were you immediately aware of what the drugs were? Could you start looking at them, or is that something that, to be 100% certain, you need to test?
It looked like crack cocaine to me, but before we would ever testify that it's crack cocaine, we would at least use a field test to confirm that.
And did you field test these drugs, or did anybody do that there? Was it determined they should be sent out for testing?
At that point in time, Detective Leckleitner and Lieutenant Schneck, who are part of our Marathon County Task Force drug investigators, were at the scene. He was able to help us get in the safe. And with the totality of everything we were doing, they offered to take all those items of evidence and process them themselves so that we could refocus on the rest of the room. So they took those items.
And they tested them for you?
I presume that they were tested. I wasn't there for that.
Okay. You were present for the testing?
That's correct.
But to your knowledge, they were given to the Marathon County Task Force to be tested?
Yes.
And you said you found some money. How much money did you find?
$400.
And that number becomes important at some point because of the amount of drugs that were found?
Yes.
Could you explain what you came to understand the amount of, at this point, suspected drugs to be and their packaging?
Sure. At first glance, it appeared to be in excess of an ounce of crack cocaine. I later learned it was just shy of an ounce and a half. With the packaging, maybe 36, 37 grams.
And you said with the packaging, how many bags of suspected at this point drugs were in the safe?
There were 63.
Okay. And do you have knowledge of how those suspected at the time drugs were divvied up?
Yes.
Could you tell me?
Sure. The largest package, which was in a baggie, was commonly referred to as about an 8-ball, which is 1/8 of an ounce. So that was between 7 and 8 grams in overall weight. there was a section in a bag that had 32 individual baggies, and each of those contained between 0.4 and a half a gram of crack cocaine, and then there was another area where there were 30 additional baggies that each also had approximately 0.4 to a half a gram of crack cocaine in each of those.
And again, you indicated that you have training and experience in drug cases. Were you aware at the time of about how much those individual bags of approximately a half a gram were worth?
Yes.
Could you tell the truth?
Sure. It sells for about $100 a gram, and if it's a half a gram, it's about $50.
So for the purposes of math, the 30 approximate half gram bags and the 32 approximate half gram bags, what's your understanding of about how much that would be worth?
You're asking me to do math here, so.
Actually, why don't we just say all of it together? Did you have an understanding of all 63 bags and how much that would be?
Yeah, because all 63 bags weighed, about 37 or so grams at $100 a piece. So the street value of that would, in half gram or gram weights, would be about $3,700.
And then, how did that, based on your training and experience, become important with the amount of money that you found in the safe?
Well, if it's approximately $100 a gram, and there's 37 grams there, and you add 4 to that, and I know through my experience that the frequency at which, when buying drugs in an investigator capacity, very infrequently when we went to buy a gram and paid $100, did we get a gram? So knowing that as the investigation continued, that maybe you started with 42 grams and you sell 4 grams or so, that leaves us right in the ballpark with the amount of drugs that we found.
And based on your understanding of this case and what was found in the safe, did it appear as though some drugs were being sold from this residence, from this safe?
Well, it appeared to me that the drugs were packaged for resale, that house at a minimum was being used to keep the drugs. Whether they were being sold from there or not, I had no information on that.
And I'm going to have you come back down with the court's permission, and we're going to look at, I'm going to have you explain what each of those are. I think we could probably use the elbow for those.
Just want to have a free narrative and talk about these?
No. Oh, that hasn't been.
Are you individual or is it one?
We'll just do it as one. Not a narrative, but maybe say what there's, how many sections there are, what each section contains, based on the description you just gave.
Sure. This is heat-sealed packaging, which is consistent with how we would normally package drugs of this type.
What's the exhibit number?
I'm sorry, exhibit number 236. This is consistent way we package drugs when we have numerous items. They're really separated. They also have Wausau, Wisconsin crime lab from our Wausau lab, which tests drugs. They have their SKU and bar numbers on them, indicating to me that they were tested at the crime lab. And you can see that we have, as I was discussing, 2 different sections of basically what at the time weighed approximately a half a gram apiece, and then in the center you have a plastic baggie that I described that would have been the 8-ball or anything else that I discussed.
Okay, and if you wouldn't mind, Detective, since these are packages, I probably don't have to worry as much about the handling, but could you kind of place those under the elbow so that you can see what we're talking about?
Sure, maybe it's
If he wants to, he, captain of the defendant, wants to walk it through as opposed to the envelope like we did in the safe, I have no problem with that. So the record should reflect the jury's getting a look at this exhibit.
Yes. And you can take a seat, thank you very much. And just for completeness of the record, the parties reached a stipulation that was allowed by the court that the drugs have been tested, and the parties agreed that they did test positive for crack cocaine. And they were tested by the crime lab by Robert Block. Okay, moving forward. Did you have the opportunity on that October 11th date to look in the bathroom of the apartment that Stephanie Lowe resided in?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, appeared to be important within the bathroom?
At the time that we were in there, one thing that caught our attention was pregnancy test kits. There were normal bathroom items that became important for us from an evidentiary standpoint because we had a toothbrush that we would believe to be Stephanie Lowe's toothbrush. There was a hairbrush, and both of those items would contain what we would expect to find her DNA on those items. So,
Let me stop you there for
Okay.
a minute. Stephanie shared this residence with Eric Holmes, correct?
yes,
So how do you, at this point, figure out whose toothbrush is whose? Did you rely on information that was given to you?
we went with pink being hers.
And then did you package that toothbrush?
Yes,
And then that was sent off as well?
yes,
And the whole hairbrush?
yes.
And that's for the purposes of DNA?
Of establishing Stephanie Lowe's DNA profile because she wasn't there for us to take a swab or a sample from.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. So if we're going to be testing all of this suspected blood within the bedroom, on the mattress, on the floor, when you say we needed a profile, could you just kind of explain to the jury, and they may understand how that works? So you take an item that you know for certain will have Stephanie's DNA on it, and then so you can compare it to other items with suspected DNA?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that we can know for certain there, but there are items that we can make an assumption or we would believe would contain her DNA. We took multiple items from the residence, hoping that if they all came back with the same female DNA profile, that we could be relatively certain that that would be Stephanie Lowe's DNA profile.
And based on your experience, having been a detective for a long time, are hairbrushes and toothbrushes the items that are commonly collected?
Yes.
Did you, when you were in the bathroom, did you see a mop and a bucket in there?
Yes. When facing the mirror or the sink immediately to the right of the vanity sink area was a mop bucket that had a mop sitting in mop water, and the handle leading it up against the bathroom wall.
And do you remember what that mop was made out of? I guess not the actual mop, but the mop handle.
I don't recall if it was a metal or a plastic mop handle. I have reviewed the images and of that scene, and it's consistent with my recollection.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 229 and 230.
Can I look at them, please?
Of course. You can't see.
Thank you.
Do you recognize Exhibits 229 and 230?
Yes, I do.
Are these a fair and accurate depiction of what the bathroom looked like on or about the time that you were in the residence?
Yes.
And this mop and bucket, as we're looking at the photo, where would that be?
Well, it's to the right of that vanity sink area.
Okay, and you can kind of see it, but you can't see the handle part, right?
No, it seems cropped off that picture.
But within that picture, what materials, if any, does it, well, do you know what materials that part of the mop is made out of? Do you recall?
Well, there was a plastic component, a handle a little bit lower. I can't say that I recall whether the mop was made of metal or whether it was plastic, the main handle portion.
Are you certain that it was not wood?
Yes,
Was it something that you would call a smooth surface, a rough surface, or something else?
a smooth surface.
And then I'm just going to show Exhibit 230. And you can kind of see that same portion, right?
Yes, you can.
And same thing, you can kind of see two different possible materials, but you're not exactly sure what the handle was made out of.
That's correct.
I'd ask for 29 and 30 to be in the evidence.
No objection.
They are received.
Within, you had said the kitchen and the dining area were pretty reasonable. We discussed the bathroom and the bedroom and the spare bedroom. Was there anything based on your information gathering on that first search warrant that you thought is noteworthy related to this case?
In addition to the things we've talked about, is what you're looking for.
Is there anything that I've missed that you can think of?
You know, I think to paint an accurate picture, at that moment, we were still hoping for the best. We were hoping that, and had conversations about Stephanie Lowe showing up in 10 minutes with us in her house and yelling at us for why are you there? But the longer we were there and seeing the different items of blood and where they were, at least what we believed to be blood, our real perspective on what we were dealing with changed throughout the processing of that afternoon. So it's something we've talked about, but it's you might find a blood stain in someone's house, but you don't start to find them in all the places we were finding them that we couldn't come up with a logical explanation for.
Let me make sure I've done everything. Oh, this was something that I meant to cover with Detective Kindlarski, and I didn't, and if you don't know, tell me. But I'm going to show you what's been marked previously as Exhibit 224. Does this appear to be, and take your time to review it, have you seen this before?
No.
Okay. Does this appear to you to be a fair and accurate representation of the layout of Stephanie Lowe and Eric Mahomes' apartment as you recall it from your portion of the investigation?
Yes, it does.
Now, I just didn't want the jury to be confused at all. On the stair portion, there's an entry level, and then there's a landing leading into the doorway, and there's a portion marked bullet in floor. Do you see that?
Yes.
Were you aware that there was a bullet in the floor on that landing
On which date?
when you were investigating this case?
At some point, I was aware there was a bullet hole.
Was there a determination made that that was completely unrelated to this case?
Yes.
Okay. When you and the other detectives were doing the search, I think you mentioned it, but I just want to make sure. Was there a white undershirt with a stain recovered from Stephanie's apartment?
Yes.
And then was there also another white female shirt with a stain that was recovered from Stephanie's bedroom. Were there 2 shirts?
Yes.
And were those, when I say stain, was that possibly a suspected blood stain at the time?
They were collected because we believed we had a blood stain on those items of clothing.
And those would have been sent off to the crime lab as well?
Yes.
We just may need a moment to locate those.
Journalist death and stretch shots are pretty simple at this time. Objection.
235 is the safe in the packet, includes the safe. I have no objection to 235. 236 is the crack cocaine recovered. I have no objection to that.
They are both admitted into evidence.
And then finally, 227 and 228, no, we haven't used those yet. Those are just marked. Those are pretty soon. Okay. So, Detective, I'm showing you now what's been marked as exhibits 237 and 238. If you wouldn't mind opening those bags and seeing if you can identify those items and confirm that they are what you would have collected on, or what you and the other detectives would have collected on 10/11 of 2010.
First item, exhibit 238, is a brown paper bag that contains my handwriting. It was Wasapee evidence item MLB8, which are my initials and the number 8, including the case number for our in-house case number. So I recognize this bag. I see that as my handwriting. It also includes the words white shirt with blood stain, female.
Did the detective say female at the end?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Captain, I'm sorry.
And if the court and defense don't have an issue with it, if Captain Barnes could just get a little closer to the jury to show them the shirt.
No objection.
Go ahead.
And the jury can see there's some numbers and some circles on that. Based on your work experience and training, is that common from the crime lab to do when they're locating their testing areas?
Yes.
I'd ask the deputy to give the evidence.
No objection.
Is received exhibit number
238.
Same thing.
Yes, please.
Okay. The next item I'm holding is a brown paper bag with Exhibit 237 placed on it. It also contains the Wasapee Evidence Identification MLB7, which again are my initials, and the seventh, which would be the seventh piece of evidence I submitted under case number 10-11163. I recognize the handwriting on this bag as my own.
Do you recognize this item as the one that you gathered on October 11th of 2010?
Yes, I do.
And if nobody has any objections, you could ask the jury.
None. Thank you. None.
And again, same question with the markings. There are some markings on this shirt.
That's correct.
Are you able to locate a size on this particular shirt?
Yes.
What is the size on it?
It shows XL, and then EG and TG. I'm not sure what EG and TG are, but extra large. It needs to be an extra large size.
And it appears to be one of those, like, comes in a big package of tank tops.
Yes, it's a Fruit of the Loom t-shirt.
Tank top.
Tank top.
Thank you. I didn't do it. And I'd ask that be moved into evidence as well. That's 237.
There is no objection.
is received.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the next, hold on a second. Okay. I'm moving on from the October 11th search warrant to October 18th. Did you and additional detectives Strobach and Buckner, return to the same residence on October 18th, 2010?
Yes.
And on that date, were you given consent and a key to enter by Claudia Blake?
Yes.
And what was your, were you there to collect some additional things that Claudia had noticed when she was in the residence? If I'm wrong, please correct me.
Well, to the best of my recollection, I'm not sure why we went back to look for additional evidence. That's entirely possible.
Okay, well then we'll leave it at that. You don't recall, but you did end up collecting some evidence from the apartment that day, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the day you talked earlier about the carpeting, right?
Yes.
And that was the carpeting in Stephanie and Eric's bedroom?
Correct.
And you wanted to get that tested for possible blood/DNA.
Yes.
And, I'm sorry, I'm going to make you get up again. I'm going to ask you to open what has now been marked as Exhibit 239. Identify it and tell the jury. Oh yeah, I'm saying this time, but I'm saying it's easy. Before we open that, I think it might be a good idea to open some paper on the floor. Just because there might be some slough off. Could you open that and identify it as the carpet that you located on December or October 18th of 2010?
Sure. I mean, Exhibit 239 is a large paper bag with evidence tape on it. It lists the Wasapedi evidence identification as MLB 20. Those are my initials, the 20th item of evidence. To also include the case number associated with something will be missing. This item also appears to have been submitted to the crime lab as it contains their stickers with barcode and identification numbers. The item, MLB 20, is the piece of carpet I used a razor blade and cut out of the bedroom believed to be used by Stephanie Lowe and Eric Holmes.
And if you wouldn't mind, I don't want to go too far off the paper, but could you kind of hold it up so the jury can see it also?
May I approach the look carefully? You may. Judge, I have no objection if the captain wants to parade it on the jury.
As long as you guys want to see the top of the
Additionally, there is a Sharpie, or what appears to be the use of a marker encircling what appears to be a brownish stain on the carpet. The marker was not present at the time this was collected. That is part of the processing of this item.
And you mentioned processing, so again, as part of your process, you were one of the detectives you were with. I believe you said this was your initials on the bag, so this would have been bagged and sent to the crime lab for processing?
That's correct.
And then also at that October 18th, 2010 interview, you collected some additional presumed blood stains from the headboard and the hallway wall?
That's correct.
Okay. And those would have been also sent to the crime lab?
Yes.
All right. Next time you're at the residence, continued investigation, October 21st of 2010?
That sounds familiar.
What is luminol and how does it work?
Well, I can tell you luminol is a chemical that law enforcement uses to help identify blood stains and patterns associated with blood stains and other biological materials. And the best way I can describe its use is that it's like any squirt bottle, like a 409 bottle or a cleaning bottle that you might have at home, except in this case, it's not a cleaning solution. It's this chemical whose brand name is luminol. There are other things that also conduct or perform the same way.
Do you receive any specialized training in how to appropriately use luminol?
Yes, well, I have, where I've been at training, so that I can say I've been professionally trained in the use of luminol. However, you squirt the stuff on the stains, and
then if it lights up, it says something?
correct.
And you may have said this, the purpose of luminol is to locate the presence of what?
Well, the vast majority of the time it's used to notice the presence of blood.
And does luminol also react in a similar manner with bleach?
Yes.
So, on October 21st of 2010, did you go to the residence of Stephanie, or the former residence of Stephanie Lowe, to use luminol to try to identify whether some of the stains that you had seen were in fact blood?
We felt pretty confident the stains that we had seen were blood, but luminol allows you to see much smaller trace items of blood. So in addition to having those areas we were familiar had blood illuminate, we were also looking to identify other areas that we might not have been able to see, or to help us identify patterns